So today's gospel lesson, I don't think could be more appropriate than anything else, honestly, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of Lent, where the pandemic is starting to maybe break a little, where we can see a fuzzy future of a better place that we're not quite at yet. And then we get today's gospel reading that is all about how old things must die so that new things can be born. The old grain must die so a plant can be born. Now, just from a simple gardening side of things, this is absolutely true. As a person who's dabbled back and forth in gardening on and off, one of the core things I learned early on is you got to prune plants if you want plants to grow healthy, right? You got to go in there every season or every other season or every third season or whatever and prune the plant back if you're going to have a good harvest, or you're going to have beautiful flowers, or at least a, bush not taking over your yard. And that this death that occurs during pruning creates new life in the garden. But this isn't just true of plants. This is true of us. And I know talking about death is like the last thing anyone wants to do in a pandemic, right? Because all we have had day after day is how things couldn't be like they were in 2019. And we've had more than a year of hearing about how things couldn't be like they were back in those good old days. But there's a great message of hope. Not a message of hope that says, hey, we could go back to 2019, but a message of hope of something better, something greater. See, we have an opportunity. You do in your personal life, we do in the life of the congregation. We all have these amazing opportunities ahead of us at this point, just about here. See, a lot of old habits of ours, yours, mine, ours, have all had to die. And new habits had to come along, like wearing masks. And while surely some of the old good habits are going to be back, there might be good new habits, new opportunities, new plants that could be born. In my years of ministry, I've seen this time and time again, in which you work with a community, a faith community, and in that faith community, there's often all these different programs and all these different things going on. And some of them sometimes have run their course or need to be revitalized, or as a good friend of mine back in Nebraska said, sometimes you just got to etch-a-sketch things. Shake it, if you remember those. And often the reaction is to mourn, to be sad, and that's okay. But this text reminds us that when we begin to look forward, when we begin to hear God's calling, when we do those moments in which we have to change, convert, and pivot to a new world, and I know we're all tired of pivoting, but that is when the old can die and the new can be born. And again, that exists for communities, but it also exists for you as an individual. See, I'm betting that there are some really healthy habits from 2019 you're dying to get back to. I know I really want to get back to the gym and I need it. But I bet you there's also some bad habits from 2019 that had to go away. Or some new skills that you've picked up during this pandemic. Or some new ideas. Or some new ways of doing things that are in fact actually better. And so today's gospel is calling us in, calling us to look at that, calling us to review that, so that those bad habits from 2019 that didn't make it through 2020, they can stay in 2019. And those good habits that you might have picked up in 2020, maybe you keep them for 2021 and going forward. And of course, those bad habits that we all picked up in 2020 can also go away in 2021. They can be part of what dies, part of what you let go, part of what you can put behind you. But we do this not because we just put bad things behind us, but so that new life can grow. This is one of the great sort of misconceptions of Lent. People look at Lent and they say, oh, it's about giving up something, soda or chocolate or something like that. And that's true. But Lent is really about going ahead and giving something up, letting something die. Not because that itself is all particularly that great, but it's about getting rid of that old habit or that old way of doing something so that there's room for that new plant to grow, that new life to take off, that new journey to God, for God to send you on. So take a few minutes this week. Pray. And do the most Lent thing ever. Ask God what you need to let die so that you can be happier. What you need to let go, whether they be expectations or things on your task list, so that there's room for God to do some planting in the upcoming spring. Amen.